Hi folks, Paul from Slow Dragon Music here, and this is SDM TV. Here we are folks, this is episode 5 of SDM TV. It's episode 5. I can hardly believe that. It's been some ride talking to a whole bunch of musicians and industry people around Europe about a whole load of things that we're dealing with at the moment. We've covered sound, radio, live battles, and the last time it was a current hot topic of event streaming. We're following that up this time with another issue on the tip of a few people's tongues right now, which is touring into, out of, and through EU and non-EU countries. Now, I think this will be a fairly interesting one for those looking at post-Brexit Britain. So I wanted to get the insights from some people who are both European and have had to cross some kind of European borders in the name of rock and roll. So today's guests are Bruno from Shadows Far in Switzerland, Rob Halkett from The Exploited Scotland, and Salvador Amijo from Black Viper in Norway. So how are we doing tonight, folks? We good?
Yeah,
fantastic.
Yes, excellent. It is interesting times we're living in right now, yeah? So, Bruno, I would actually like to start with you, as you're the furthest away, being based in Switzerland, which is essentially, it's a non-EU country, isn't it? But right in the middle of mainland Europe. So I did notice...
Actually an island, yes.
It's an inland island.
Yes.
So I did notice a few years back you landed a slot at the Siege of Limerick Festival in Ireland. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
So
yeah.
Was getting there relatively hassle-free, I guess, is the main question here.
No, I mean, actually, we're in Switzerland. We were never part of the European Union. And I mean, we're a small band. And when we do travelings, we usually just rent the van or take our cars and then we just go. And of course, we had a couple issues at the customs or with the police, but there was never a problem. The only thing that we always carry with us is just like a list of gear that we have with us. And I mean, the most funny thing happened actually at the airport in Ireland when we went out and we had our guitars with us, and so everything came with the plane. But obviously, our guitars weren't there, so we had to wait. And then there was some policemen coming to us, and they asked us, "Okay, you should come to us to the customs clearance." And we went there, and they asked us, "Is that yours?" And we said, "Yeah, that's our guitars." And they said, "No, those are weapons. So where's your weapon license?" So, I mean, I don't know I don't know how the X-ray is working in Ireland, but
it's funny.
But then we just opened it and it was fine.
Oh,
yeah. I think that might have been Shannon Airport. I'm actually not in Scotland. I'm in Ireland. I'm in County Kerry at the moment, so I'm only like 40 miles, maybe 50 miles from Limerick, where we're playing at. So, yeah.
No, but that was pretty fun.
They think guns. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really blame them. I suppose right now that's going to be even more up there on their list of things to keep an eye on.
Right now it is, yes.
It's going a bit wild there at the moment. But anyway, so yeah, we were talking about when you're leaving the Swiss borders to play in the EU. Then is there not paperwork or anything that gets in the way? Do you actually have to deal with the likes of carnets and work visas for the EU? From Switzerland. I
mean, if you really do it the professional way, then of course you should. I think the corner, yes.
Yeah, it's the other way around usually that you'll experience trouble. I used to play with Karma to Burn for years, who were based in Beale. Even though the two guys were American, they would get their European work. And honestly, crossing into Switzerland with a Swiss vehicle, it didn't matter. You know, it really didn't matter what paperwork. They almost never stopped you. But then if you're touring, they might stop you for your merch money if you're in a UK vehicle.
So what we're going to do is I'll come round in a circle. I'll get around. I'll get around.
Right,
Rob.
okay, yeah.
I'll just try and keep it split up so we go round in a circle, person by person. Yeah. So are you saying that if at that level, then Bruno, it's pretty much plain sailing now. You don't have to worry too much coming from.
Yeah, and we also try to not have, let's say, all our instruments with us. I mean, usually among the metal scene, this is quite common that we exchange our gears. So, I mean, if we go to Ireland, of course, I'm not taking my amp with me. It's just my guitar and then a couple drum things, and then you just play with what you have.
So, I mean, then you aren't having to worry about carnets, but work visas, I take it, hasn't tripped you up at any point then, no?
Yeah, I mean, we've never done things like that. I mean, or maybe we just had luck, but no.
Okay, so Salvador then, you're in a kind of a similar situation in Norway, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, as Switzerland, Norway's never been part of the EU. But we are part of some other treaty deal. I don't know if Switzerland is part of the Schengen treaty.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we got free travel within the EU. Now with Brexit, I guess it's going to be a bit harder traveling around, at least over to the Isle.
I mean, you've played in likes of Sweden and everything before, yeah?
Yeah. We played in Sweden, we played in Austria, Romania, Greece, and we'd never have any problems with that. As Bruno, we do not take our own instruments unless it's highly, highly required.
I mean, on you go.
Yeah, go on. No, nothing. I was just about to say, we haven't had that issue yet.
Yeah.
With the instruments. Yeah.
I wonder if it'll change as time progresses between everywhere. But I mean, I've only ever sort of been up over there as a traveller, as a tourist, not working with music. But traveling between, say, Denmark and Sweden, going across on the bridge, they're quite strict at times on passports and things like that. I just wondered if there was any issue with that for musicians, even just traveling in that area, or is it quite smooth?
I would guess if you're from this area, they'd be like, okay, they have this Norwegian car or Swedish car, so let them through. Scandinavian countries are like there with each other. I mean, we are close as to one country as three countries can be. But I would guess if you come from maybe Greece or Germany or some other country outside of Scandinavia, it would be troublesome if you're going to cross at least into Denmark and then into Sweden and then into Norway.
Yeah.
You would be, I'd reckon you would be stopped by one of the borders.
Yeah. So there is obviously, like you mentioned, the Schengen area agreement, which UK isn't, and it's not an EU free trading anymore either. Those are things that fairly grease the wheels, but to get outside of that box, and last but not certainly least, I'll get round to you, Rob. How long is it you've been with the Exploitedist? Quite a while, is it not?
Yeah, sort of, I guess 17 or 18 years now. In fact, no, basically 20 years, but I used to work for them. I'm a sound engineer, so I used to just do crew and stuff for a few years. And then my first gig playing was about 2004. So 17 years playing with them, I guess. Yeah.
That's a good long tour of duty. So, I mean, obviously, you've seen a lot of gigs all over the place with that band.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to crossing borders, like in Europe, and generally, we're lucky enough. We're usually traveling in a nice, like a nightliner very often or whatever. And yeah, you present your passports. But I've got to say, 99 times out of 100, there's just it's very fluid. That's including, we'll say, Sweden, Norway, and I'm generally, because I travel and I'm Irish, but I'm traveling with a UK band. There can be sometimes a little bit of but there are certain countries that are, I know, and right across the board, all types of music, but it doesn't do any good to be in a heavy metal band. But getting into Serbia very often, even if you're coming from an ex-Yugoslav country, you can end up being stuck at the border there for 4 or 5 hours while things just, very, very slowly. And they will take money from you if they can.
Yes.
Yeah. I think, what's really, what I think has happened, I remember touring in the States and talking to Canadian bands and finding out, and just for the first time hearing, this is 12, 13 years ago, that, you've got to pay 20% of all your merch as a kind of deposit at the border, and then you're going to chase them up to try and get it back afterwards. Yeah. So I unfortunately have an awful feeling that could be what we're looking at in the UK. Sorry.
Bye. Oh, he's upside down.
Hey. What's happening? Wow, that's a talent.
We're getting somewhere now.
Sorry about this.
There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
Winner.
I was just thinking though, when you were talking about that, the French quite quickly came out and announced that UK-based artists will have 60 days, up to 60 days to work in France. And I can't imagine a lot of UK-based bands that would tour. Okay, if ostensibly they're arriving in France. Now, I'm not suggesting that bands should do this, but if they are allowed 60 days in France, I think it would be incredibly difficult to then police it pan-European. Mm-hmm. If you're legally arriving in France and you start your tour in France as a UK-based band, I mean, I can't imagine the Spanish, the Italian, even the Swiss or German border stopping people and making an issue of it. But then I might be wrong. Maybe they're going to be on the lookout for that.
Are Germany not one of the countries that have now said that they would allow a certain amount of visa-free work for UK bands? I think Holland
Excellent.
did.
Yeah, well, I'm delighted to hear that. I have a funny feeling that's what will happen. I remember reading about France quite sort of early January. I hope that's a two-way street, because even, from my perspective, basically ostensibly being a UK-based band touring in Europe, I work and I go to gigs, I work in music, and it would be a huge shame if European bands on sort of medium level bands are restricted in not being able to come to the UK to play. That would be a real shame, and people who make decisions don't think that something like, €500 for a work visa for a person is a lot of money, but those people are making tens of thousands. €500 is the entire budget for a lot of bands. And I'm not exaggerating. That's the truth. That's the difference between being able to do the gig and not doing the gig, It
is. I mean, the whole Carnet thing, and that is that for a UK band.
I meant to say that about Switzerland. I've done Carnets lots, and it's the time-consuming thing of doing it, maintaining it, and keeping it up to date. I think that's going to be a huge expense for top-tier bands. I know, was it Noel? What's his name? The ex-Oasis chap who took his own backline not long ago to the States for a tour. They had to do a Carnet, and a friend of mine was involved in that, and it took, it was a week of pre-production, having serial numbers, everything, all the rest of it. But then that's not. It's with a situation like those kind of big bands, they're going to have to change that every time they do it, because they're not going to have the same musicians. Even it's going to be constantly changing Carnet. Where at least if it's a case of you're in Switzerland, maybe you're going to play in Freiburg in Germany, and you're crossing the border and you're worried. It is just a case of changing your previous one for what you've got today. We're bringing a 5150 instead of a JCM 800 on that day. Change the Carnet out. You're not going to get, there's nothing wrong with that once you declare exactly what you have.
So they're controlling it piece by piece at the customs.
Yeah. And it's just what's really unfair about that situation is I've seen, you've got a custom guitar that's worth loads and loads and loads of money, but it doesn't have a serial number. And they can be quite iffy about it. Yeah, because in theory, you're supposed to have a completely unique identifier for that piece of gear to prove that you're not selling that. That's their purpose, is to make sure that you're not actually transporting it to
So
sell.
then we're very happy that we
easy
fly under the radar. Huh?
Yeah, well, Mulhouse, there's the way to go. Mulhouse International Airport in Basel, that's basically in 3 countries. You can exit the German, the French side, or you can go to Switzerland. So it's that's what, for me anyway, especially going to Biel, it was always where we went.
So, Rob, going to do one more thing here. What then is your most brutal border crossing experience with the band?
Oh Jesus, you don't want to know. I mean, that I can talk about legally, like. No, actually, I don't know. Definitely, 2003, touring North America. We'd finished 6 weeks in the States and we're going into Canada to finish up. I think we had 2 or 3 concerts left. We played in Vancouver. Actually, it was before I started playing in the band, so I was just crew. And we got stopped at the border. They were convinced that they were going to find drugs in the tour bus, and they held us. Now, funnily enough, I was born in Canada. Not a lot of, doesn't come into Irish Rob, but they illegally stopped us, but they had no reason to hold me as a Canadian citizen. So I was very pissed off, obviously, but they held us for 10, 12 hours, so long, and they wouldn't let us communicate with anybody at all. So it became clear we were not going to make this gig in Montreal. Well, we couldn't contact the promoter. They refused to let us. And I said, this is pretty bad news. And what happened was there was full-on riots in Montreal, and like burnt out police cars and stuff. But we were blamed because it was, they'd started the gig, and then it got to a point where, the exploited can't make it. They've been stopped at the border. So they had a lot of very pissed off Canadian punks who just went out to the street. I understand that this had been happening more and more at that time, that the Canadian authorities had stopped different bands at the border without any reason. It wasn't like they drained the septic tank on the tour bus to try and find drugs.
That must have been a fun job.
Well, yeah, exactly. And you just think, like, which of us looks that desperate of a junkie to be kind of taking drugs from the actual septic tank,
Oh, it's a grim story. I don't even want to know what the story that was worse than that was.
Yeah, but to be honest, that's never been in Europe. I've never, maybe Serbia, actually going in from Croatia into Bosnia Herzegovina. Yeah, there's stuff that will happen, or Russia. Belarus can be really iffy, but I think the European Union Schengen zone, I've never had any experiences personally. I think the Americans that I toured with a couple of times had problems where they'd overstayed in Europe, but then actually the Norwegians have a unilateral agreement that must have been signed in the last decade that allows them to extend their right to remain. So,
yeah, it sounds like compared to most other places that we can look to, Scandinavia is actually possibly quite a good example to try and follow if we can convince the powers that be to actually take that up. But I was going to come back to go around the other guys for a minute and just talk a little bit more about their experiences, because I believe, we'll start with Salvador, Black Viper. You've played in the UK recently, or in the last few years, have you not? Down in London, I think?
Yeah, we played the Live Evil Festival, I guess it was before, like a week before the lockdown started.
Wow. In and out, lucky.
Yeah, extremely lucky. So yeah, that was our last gig outside of Norway, yeah.
And was that a fairly smooth transition as well itself? You didn't have to do anything in particularly?
No, I guess, I can't remember when Brexit happened, but it wasn't done at that point. So we just got in, we got out, and then pandemic happened, and Brexit happened, and then we just waved bye-bye to the grave.
It is hard to tell. It is hard to tell if coronavirus doing its thing at the moment, what the real impacts are. But have you made any plans then to come back over to the UK, or are you a little bit hesitant until we find out more?
as I see it now, we are a fairly small band. So, like as Rob said, 5,000 euros or 500 euros is a bit much for us. But we would love to go back. But yeah, with the whole Brexit and the visas and the whole shebang, I mean, we could probably get on the list for what's it called, the fee free or something with the festivals. They got like some youth.
Yeah, if you can get like a big event or something to essentially be your sponsor or spokesperson, then you can come over if your fees are only covering the costs, and they're putting a name forward as that, like representing you coming over. But that's not really going to work for like what we would call a toilet tour, where you're playing places like, well, like if you were playing places like, I suppose, is it Kniven, something like venues that sort of size that you have over there?
Oh yeah, Kniven's not a venue. It's just
does it not have a venue?
No. It's Revolver that has the venues. Like it's right next door, but yeah.
All right, okay, but that sort of size of venue, there's obviously there's a circuit of them in the UK, and bands trying to come over to get their first foot in the door. That's what they would do. They play a load of these, and they're not going to get them to like sanction them and say all this is organised in advance, which is a real shame, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of, I would guess, like a lot of, as you say, like starting out bands and like younger or more obscure bands like us that suffer from this, not getting to travel to the UK.
And it will go the other way as well, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't know about the other countries, but I think Norway is like fairly. I think they're going to jump on the wagon about the you can stay here for like 3 weeks or something like that.
Well, a 3-week tour of Norway.
Yeah, I mean,
I would go for it, but
you'd see a lot of mountains.
Bruno, back to yourself as well. You said to me when I was just getting a wee catch up before we got to the interview that you hadn't played in the UK, but I was looking at your Siege of Limerick date, and was there not a Belfast date as well?
Actually, we played 3 times in Ireland already, or 4 times. I think it's melting. My memory is melting together. I think it's 3. I think it's 3 times, and we played Belfast 2 times.
Because that's technically that's a UK date there.
Yeah,
that's very political.
I mean, Belfast wasn't that strange. I mean, to me, Londonderry was more strange to play. We were in Derry, and then there was, I think that was quite political. I mean, although we were not political at all, but people were constantly asking us about our opinion, and I mean, really, I have no clue about that.
I think both those cities are right on the frontier of some problems that are going to arise from this,
and it's pretty actual again. So
I mean, but previously you said you went over and you felt quite comfortable doing it, and obviously that was quite smooth because you can just go, or could just go between the two pretty much as freely as you liked.
Yes, maybe that's the reason, because like he just said before, it's because of the Schengen. You know, I mean, this basically allows us to go very smoothly from one country to another. So, I mean, we've been held one day when we traveled from Germany over the, let's say, open border to Netherlands. Then the police catched us, and we had to take out everything from the car. And
so, where were we at, Bruno? I think we were talking about your dates in Ireland, and we were saying about what that's going to be like for them after Brexit.
Yeah, actually, I didn't even realize when you now have the Brexit, you also actually quit the Schengen.
They weren't. The UK wasn't a Schengen. Ireland isn't a Schengen, but not because ostensibly, well, yeah. So the same thing when you're in the Northern Ireland, you're in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, whereas in the Republic of Ireland, you're still Schengen. So essentially, that means there is a border that's now in Ireland. If you get me, and that's why there's one of the reasons, one of the contribution things for these kids going crazy in the last few weeks in Northern Ireland is because there's an element that they were like one of their main parties, political parties, the DUP, sort of promised that there would be certain things that they would make sure indefinitely that wouldn't happen. And one of them was that there wouldn't be what they're calling the backstop, meaning that there wouldn't be a border, that Northern Ireland wouldn't be treated any more wouldn't be treated differently to say Scotland or Wales under Brexit. But that's simply, it's become impossible. And there's a feeling that people like me would have said from 4 years ago that it was impossible to avoid. That you can't marry up the two things. Either you have to have like the Good Friday Agreement, or you can have Brexit. But to have both is proved to be impossible.
It's a real mess. I thought it was bad. You had all the checks and everything coming over on the ferry from Scotland before. I thought that was a bit wild, but this is going to be 1,000 times worse, I suppose. I suppose with let's fast forward 10 years and it'll be an independent Scotland and a united Ireland. So, we'll all be talking about Brexit as being great. That was why. Yeah.
It was your start, right?
We'll all be talking in Norwegian about how great Brexit turned out. After we convince you lot to adopt this. That'd be a nice tour. Ireland, Scotland, Norway, Sweden, Finland. Yeah, I could do that.
Yeah, you can guys. You can join Scandinavia. I mean, the Age of Vikings needs to start back again. So why the fuck not?
So I mean, we were kind of discussing the next point there, which was I was going to come back to you, Rob, as we said before, done a lot of things. I mean, do you think then that Brexit is going to have the devastating effect on touring that it kind of looks like on paper, or do you think that 10 years down the line?
Genuinely, I don't see it. I don't see it as being as disastrous as I, in my mind, had it. But that was pretty much meltdown completely. I think that the UK government have not listened in any way to the people in performing arts when it came to Brexit. They've not taken anything on board. But they have a very strong history, UK government, of pretending, assigning experts to look at things and then just ploughing on with what they were going to do in the first place.
Yeah.
Which seems to me, when I think about friends in related things like theatre, people who work in festivals but maybe they're not musicians or they're not sound engineers. They just are, they work professionally with festivals. The UK-based people, which it has been, there's been so many people, even for logistics and transportation across Europe for things. There's been a lot of UK-based companies and UK-based people, small businesses that have done really well out of music and I suppose as cultural exports working in different festivals. That work has gone to them now. They're simply not going to be employed. People from other countries across Europe will be much more employable than those people, and it's a shame because there was a fairly healthy kind of knowledge base and a background where people you could start as an apprentice and learn how to do sound, how to do rigging for a festival. Go and actually build the stages, put up the gear, put in the speakers, make sure that the lighting all working, be there the whole time. Those are great jobs to have, and it's cool. I know I certainly have friends and I've worked those things, and it's a real. It can be good money, and it can be really, if you're into music, it can be a really pleasant experience. You get to see some of your favorite bands, you get to meet some of your favorite musicians, you get to hang out, and you get to learn a craft and a trade. And I think one of the really devastating things that Brexit is going to have is not on the sort of really visible side of the music industry, but it's on those other people that maybe 5 guys go start a little company, they get good at rigging, they work on all of these huge, the big techno festivals across Europe. They're not going to be employable anymore. They're not going to be able to get those jobs.
And I mean, this comes into this is in addition to the coronavirus.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I would like to. I mean, in years to come, I'm sure it'll be easier to look back and see how much damage Brexit was doing and how much coronavirus was doing.
Yeah.
And I'm not as perturbed. I know that the main talk is about trade and things. That I imagine that will settle down over time. Things will be worked out. And I don't mean to be too selfish about it, but like I'm not a fisherman. I don't eat fish, so I don't really care about. I mean, I do. I care about their job, and I care about that. But it's not in my immediate. Like, it hasn't been on my radar as much as this idea that, even tour bus drivers, they're no longer, even as far as I know, people are expected to get European to drive in Europe. Their UK driving license is no longer good enough on its own. They're expected to have a sort of an additional document. But that was 2 or 3 years that was announced, and then they've issued. I've physically seen these documents. They're just little cardboard, like it looks like it's forged, which is sort of you're supposed to present with your driving license. I'm not sure if they've rescinded that thing, but that was just another example of how stupid. This is nonsense. It doesn't make any actual sense.
Yes.
Mm.
Well, guys. I think we're drawing to the end of the actual recording time. For what we want to get up there at the end. Sorry about the wee breakdown. I misjudged my my run time with Zoom there for a minute, but we're back on. We got back on it. It's been a really great chat. I really appreciate you coming on. I think to me the whole situation isn't just like the UK scene and European scene. I've always sort of seen it behind the scenes and in front as a bit of a symbiotic relationship. It's all kind of one thing to me. I think it's really important that we, no matter what happens, try and keep these relationships open ourselves and just try and help each other work through it. But time will tell. As we say, we can't find out until we actually start working with it. But it has been great to have all of your various inputs. Absolutely superb to just hear the viewpoints and experience from different places. Thank you very much, guys.
Cheers, man. Right on.
Thank you very much.
And that once more is a wrap, folks. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to stay hooked up to Slow Dragon Music on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube. But again, most of all, check out some tasty links from Myrockout and the bands down below.